On the 9th of September 2023.
Party. They beat Germany.
The world of football was left stunned by one of the biggest upsets of the modern era. The Japan men's national football team, who never in their history had made it past the World Cup round of 16, faced four-time world champions Germany in what many thought would be a routine international friendly. Japan were predicted to be a walk in the park for the Germans, especially since the game was being played on German soil. However, by some miracle, the underdogs came out on top with a 4-1 win against the nation with the second most World Cups in history.
Ungarn mit 3-2 Toren im Finale.
West Germany are champions of the world.
Deutschland ist vollkommen zurecht nach einer
The world champions are Germany.
That disgraceful result marked Germany's fourth defeat in their last 5 outings, and finally stamped in everyone's minds that Germany's national team were suddenly a shadow of their former self. After Germany's glorious victory over Argentina in 2014 World Cup finals, before which they had famously disgraced 5-time world champions Brazil in a 7-1 semi-final win, the German national team were quite literally on top of the footballing world. According to several pundits, including Rio Ferdinand and Gary Lineker, Germany was set to once more absolutely dominate the sport, bringing back the Franz Beckenbauer and Gerd Müller era. The world was supposed to enter a football era reminiscent of the second half of the 20th century, where West Germany dominated in major tournaments, winning 3 World Cups, featuring in 4 World Cup finals between 1970 to 1990 and winning 3 European championships. But quite ironically, the period that followed their 2014 World Cup glory would be the worst in the history of the German national football team, even if it wasn't immediately obvious. Their next major tournament was the 2016 Euros, where they crashed out in the semi-finals after taking a 2-0 loss at the hands of France. This was by no means a bad result, or at the very least, it wasn't anything German fans weren't already used to. They had similarly crashed out in the semis of the 2010 World Cup and in the semis of the 2012 Euros 2 years later. They went on to win the 2017 Confederations Cup, where they defeated Chile 1-0 in the final, with a pretty young and exciting squad that generated hope for a continued successful future. But one could already see the writing on the wall in the few years following their 2014 World Cup triumph. Players like Miroslav Klose, Philipp Lahm, Bastian Schweinsteiger, Per Mertesacker, and Lukas Podolski, who were core members of the 2014 squad, retired immediately after or a couple of years following their World Cup glory. As a result, the team began lacking veteran figures and leaders capable of unifying and directing the locker room. And by the time the 2018 World Cup in Russia came around, their collapse was undeniable. They went in as defending champions, but disgracefully exited the competition in the group stages after losing to Mexico and South Korea.
I mean, it was terrible. I
feel a little bit disappointed. I think it's the first time. I don't know when Germany first went back home in the pre-round. That is really embarrassing.
This was the first time in 80 long years that Germany didn't make it to the knockout stages of the World Cup.
And the players' mistake, maybe we invite the wrong players, was not playing with passion, they was not playing with body language, they didn't have speed in the game.
And it was at this point that the world realized things were falling apart behind the scenes. Questions started getting raised about Germany's 12-year-long coach, Joachim Löw. Of course, he was the mastermind behind their latest World Cup victory and had endeared himself to German fans over the years. But during the 2018 World Cup, he had shocked everyone by leaving out Leroy Sané from the squad. At the time, Sané was at the prime age of 22 and had been sensational for Manchester City, winning the Premier League and being named PFA Young Player of the Year at the end of the 2017-18 season, so it made no sense that he didn't make the squad list for the World Cup. Reports started going around of a division in the German national team between the so-called Bayern camp and the more relaxed Bling Bling Gang group. Ozil and his crew felt the Bayern group didn't advocate strongly enough for Sané's inclusion in the 2018 World Cup, and this internal commotion eroded team chemistry. Younger players like Julian Brandt were coming into a team with a lot of tension and fragmentation. One can only imagine the challenge that would have presented to their adaptation. Comparing this to the unity of the 2014 squad, this team lacked cohesion, but their problems were far beyond that disharmony. Apart from Leroy Sané, Löw also left out some other in-form players like Sandro Wagner and Philipp Max, opting for aging veterans like Mario Gomez, whose form at club level had declined. Favoritism was also shown toward the 2014 World Cup winners, despite their poor club-level performances. Khedira and Müller, for instance, were favourites for Löw, even if they struggled to replicate past form, while promising players from the 2017 Confederations Cup, like Brandt, were sidelined despite strong club performances. The decision to make Manuel Neuer, who had missed most of the season due to injury, the starting goalkeeper over an in-form Marc-Andre ter Stegen, was also questionable.
One thing which was a bit 50-50 was who's going to play in goal. Ter Stegen, who's had a fit season, as in he hasn't been injured at all, whereas Neuer, who's hardly played this season. He was injured.
September he was injured, and they were talking about maybe he has to stop playing if this is not going to work this time. So then they decided to take him to the preparation camp, and he said to himself, if he's not capable of playing in front of the World Cup, he won't go.
On top of Joachim Löw's questionable player choices, his tactics had also become uninspired and ill-suited to his current squad's strengths. Joachim Löw persisted with a possession-heavy style reminiscent of Pep Guardiola's Bayern era, relying heavily on fullbacks and slow build-up play. This system worked in 2014 when the squad had the player profiles for it and the team was at its peak, but that was no longer the case in 2018. The 4-2-3-1 formation, which helped Germany win the 2014 World Cup and reach the semi-final in Euro 2016, wasn't suited to the current lot of players. It lacked quality in certain areas of the field, especially in the striker and fullback positions. Germany had struggled to find a proper striker since Miroslav Klose retired in 2014 and ended up settling on Timo Werner and Kai Havertz, but neither came close to producing Miroslav Klose's numbers. Miroslav Klose was a physical striker with good hold-up play and box presence. With him on the pitch, Germany easily converted chances and broke down compact defences. In his absence, the burden of scoring fell on Thomas Müller, who is an attacking midfielder by trade. Mario Gomez and Lukas Podolski also contributed, but they both faded away after the Euro 2016 campaign. As for the fullback position, Germany's positional superiority had previously allowed their fullbacks to overlap and generate overloads in the attacking third, but it also left them vulnerable to rapid counter-attacks, as a result of which they needed proper fullbacks that could quickly track back and defend when needed. But they no longer had players fitting that profile, so Joachim Löw improvised by playing his centre-backs in fullback positions, which didn't work out how he'd hoped. The high defensive line required to play the system left them vulnerable to counter-attacks, and the lack of pace in the team and the aging squad made recovery nearly impossible. A more pragmatic counter-attacking style, like the one used in the 2017 Confederations Cup, might have better suited the squad, but Joachim Löw refused to go that path. However, Germany still had time to redeem itself. The disaster of the 2018 World Cup made it blatantly obvious that Joachim Löw's coaching style wasn't working anymore. The sport of football and its players were evolving, and Löw failed to evolve with them. He was expected to be sacked immediately after Germany's early World Cup exit. His dismissal would give the next coach a full 4-year cycle to prepare for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. But Joachim Löw's past success bought him time. The German Football Association saw him as the architect of Germany's footballing revival and believed he had simply hit a stumbling block at Russia in 2018, and he deserved the chance to rebuild, but Joachim Löw also knew that he was on borrowed time as Germany's coach, so he announced his decision to leave the position after Euro 2020. He would have wanted his last dance to be one to remember, but Germany's Euro 2020 campaign ended with a 2-0 defeat to England in the round of 16. He ended his journey on a disappointing note. After the tournament, Hansi Flick took over, deservedly so. He had just come off a legendary run as Bayern coach, winning the Bundesliga, DFB Pokal, and Champions League treble in the 2019 to 2020 season. So he was expected to turn the tide for the German national team. At first, the optimism seemed justified, with a streak of early wins that suggested a revival was on the cards. But the real test was the 2022 World Cup. He had 2 years to prepare for it, and considering the huge transition and issues the national team was facing, it became a question of whether Flick had enough time to get the players developed and to understand his playing style. But by the time the 2022 World Cup rolled around, the cracks were glaring. Germany suffered their second consecutive group stage exit at the World Cup.
Out of the World Cup for a successive World Cup in the group stage. What's your reaction?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's our own fault.
And instead of recovery, 2023 brought even greater embarrassment. Flick's Germany stumbled through friendly after friendly, and the breaking point finally came when Germany was beaten 4-1 by Japan in Wolfsburg. It was not just the scoreline, but the sheer lack of fight that convinced the DFB that enough was enough. For the first time in history, a German head coach was being sacked. Hansi Flick was dismissed in the immediate aftermath of that terrible defeat. The next in line to take the position was Nagelsmann, another ex-Bayern manager, and things sort of stabilised a bit due to the added quality of the new stars like Jamal Musiala and Florian Wirtz. Nagelsmann's first real test came at Euro 2024 on home soil. Expectations were high, and while Germany didn't lift the trophy, they showed signs of renewal. The team reached the quarter-finals, their best showing at a major tournament since 2016, before falling to eventual champions Spain in extra time. It wasn't triumph, but it restored some pride and gave fans a glimpse of a team that could compete again. After Euro 2024, the focus shifted to 2026 World Cup qualification, where they ended up running into old problems. Germany managed strong performances in some matches, but inconsistency remained an issue. A shock defeat to Slovakia in September 2025 raised serious alarm bells, while earlier draws against weaker opposition reminded critics that Germany's identity crisis was not yet solved. Though they bounced back with a 3-1 win over Northern Ireland, questions lingered about their defence, lack of a reliable striker, and inability to dominate games the way past German sides once did. As of today, Germany is very much a work in progress. They have climbed back into the top 10 in FIFA's ranking. The DFB has placed long-term faith in Nagelsmann by extending his contract until Euro 2028. Undoubtedly, Germany is no longer feared as the ruthless tournament machine it once was, but with a long-term coach, perhaps the future holds brighter prospects for the football giants.